So he moved in here with his mother and his sister. She never married either. Her name was, Isabel was the mother. What was his sister's name? Let me see if I can find it here, in case you see her name mentioned someplace. Oh, anyway, she never married, and so she moved in here. So the three of them were living here. So you have these 2 bedrooms over here, and you two women and 1 man, and you know. So then, Brakenridge, see, this room would be, he probably put that table in and started bringing in his visitor, because he's in big business now. He's in the bank downtown. This is a bank, and he's, are you okay back there? You are? All right. So he had the bank and he has other business, and he got into the waterworks of San Antonio. So that was a lot, because the waterworks, redevelopment, so there's a lot in that. And he got into the publishing, and what we would call now the San Antonio Express News. He would be one of the founders of that, getting into publishing newsletters, news of San Antonio. So he was busy with all of that. So he would have a lot of entertaining to do. So my guess is that this would be probably his setup here. However, he saw that he had no place to put his guests. No rooms for his guests, and very little room besides the dining room. What are you going to do after you dine? Where are you going to go? Is there any, it was a bit small. So he decided, he was very devoted to his mother, and his mother deeded the house over to him because she was getting old now. So she deeded the house to him, and he now has it in his name. So he decided then that first he put it up for sale. Listen to this. He put it up for sale and to the city of San Antonio to sell it back to them after they had one time sold it over here. So he said, with one condition: if the city was to buy, and he charged a lot more for it than what his mother bought it for, I tell you, 4,000, I think, or something. Anyway, so for 100,000. So his mother, anyway, would be willing, whatever he wanted to do, to sell it or not. So he told the city he would give it, he would sell it to them, but there could be no discussion of his affairs. In other words, no witnesses to be called, no outside interfere. In other words, don't go into my background, don't be checking up on my background, don't see who did this and that and the other, and what deals I have, or what I'm doing. In other words, he wanted no prying into his private affairs. See, he's a businessman, and he wants to keep his business secret. See? Yep, it's nothing new, is it? Nothing new? So anyway, he decided, the city said no, that they would have to be discussing it in the council, and they would have to be going over all this and all that and then the other before they bought it back. So he dropped it, not for sale. And so then he built he decided for his mother he would build a mansion for her, which would be something very appropriate for her, a Victorian mansion. Now, it seems that they must have been of British descent, because Scottish, at least Scottish descent, because the word bracken means fern. And when he moved in here, he called the house Brakenridge. He called the house Brakenridge. So he loved the outdoors, the environment. He was a big environmental person. If he was alive today, he would be killing people who didn't take care of the environment. He was very big on the environment and protecting every species of plants and all that kind of thing. So he called this property, the ranch and the property around it, he called it Brakenridge. Now, it kept the name Brakenridge until the sisters purchased it in the late 1800s. When they purchased it, they changed the name to Brakenridge to name it after the founder, the owner. That's the reason it's called Brakenridge Villa. Because he didn't name it after himself. He called it Brakenridge. His environmental name was for. So that's an interesting point. It was the sisters who said, this is his house, we'll name it after him. You have to have a name on a house, you know what I mean? Like when it becomes a period house, for old time. So anyway, during his reign, his time here, he traveled widely. He traveled to India, the far Near East, to Holland, various countries, and from there he brought back all kinds of ornamental things. This he brought from France, this mirror. Look at that. He had it shipped from France to America, and from New Orleans, shipped to New Orleans. From New Orleans, he had it transported down here in an ox cart. Now, an ox is an animal like a donkey, a large kind of a donkey is an ox. And a cart would be these big, long, kind of a trailer kind of a cart, drawn by two animals usually. Now imagine that in those days, that's how you transported your good. No trains, remember, no trains to take you a big long thing. Transported manual labor. That's how people survive, manual labor. That man would have a job. Driving an oxen cart from New Orleans to San Antonio, he would get paid for that. See, that's how he lived. So we're all victims of our period of time in which we were living. So that's how he got. Now the other furnishings that I'll show you, a lot of them now, I'm sure that cabinetry up there with all those dishes, that would reflect his time when he would have all his, he would use this room all the time to have banquets for his cronies, his friends, his bankers, all of those. They would have access here. And some of these things could be his as well, because I'm thinking that the ranch house would be more in the period of ranchers. It would not have, to me, ornamental items, but the couches and things look like the period. But some of the other fine cabinetry could well belong to Brakenridge. So anyway, now he decides, because the city doesn't want to buy his property without negotiating different things, so he says, no, I'm going to sell it. So I'm going to build a mansion for my mother. That was his intention. So he decided then to start with a solarium. So from here, this was the end of the house, right? The end of the ranch right here, this door. So from here on out is his building. Beginning with the solarium for the sun, a sun porch to take advantage of the sun on both sides. That was a sitting room during the day for his mother and sister and visitors to enjoy the sunshine. They called it a solarium. So that was his first part. And then from there, he was building a three-story mansion. We're going to go over there now and see it. Now the top part is the third floor is off. It's an attic now. It used to be his place where he would do his work with the weather. He worked on the weather. So as you can see, this was a very nice room for during the summertime. Sun porch, solarium. Nicely accommodated. Visitors. You probably have chairs here. Tea, probably served little refreshments. And things like that here. It was nice. And then from here, he built his three-story. Now the top story was his attic, third floor, and he was always looking into the weather and forecasting weather and studying. He was a very multi-talented man, very interested. Like he had music, he had his pipe organ over here when he came in that little alcove with pipe organ. He has his piano, we see it back here, and he loved entertaining. He never married, that's one thing. He had no heir to the throne. He had never married, neither he nor his sister. So he was busy with his friends. They were his life. They would come in and they would, be entertained lavishly. So on the third floor, it's just the attic. On the second floor there are two bedrooms for the women and his bedroom for himself. And there are bathrooms as well up there now. So I'm sure by that time, he was able to add on some bathrooms. But like you say, electricity now, I'm not sure what the year would be. That you can find that out yourselves. What year would you have electrical appliances? But other than lighting, but maybe not fires or heating. Now, so I don't know anything about the heating or cooling when that was added on here. That would be a later development. So right now they're depending on the fireplaces. And so the second floor then, of course, was there are 3 bedrooms and a little area, kind of a little sitting area. And then now, today, those 3 offices upstairs are used by the administration offices of the sisters. The general aid is over here, and then up to the second floor are the general aid official offices. The general coordinator, and then 2 of the cabinet or team members, and secretary and social. So that's what's upstairs. So we don't go up there, but the ground level is what we're going to be studying. You're going to love to see the dining room. Before we get into the dining room, we go through their little, what you would call the coffee room in those days. Like, people ate their food in stages. Like, if you ever go to France, if you're ever in France, you'll see they serve you different courses, what they call it, and you know you'll be having. You think that you already had your meal, and it's really only the first course, and then the second course. You know, there's little things for each period, you know, like that. So he started off with a little private area back here under the stairs. Now notice when you see the stairs, I want you to notice the woodwork. He insisted, because of all his travel, he brought back information on like Dutch floors, Dutch tile floors, beautiful Parisian from Paris, beautiful ornate, the woodwork. He has 3 types of wood included in what you're going to see. By that I mean of Texas wood, like, you know, his furniture was all mahogany. And then you'll notice other types, but he included so much of nature, bringing in the exterior into the interior. Beautiful. And so he started off with having a little corner room here, and then a little coffee area over here, and then his crown jewel is his dining room. And you'll die when you see it. His dining room, he modeled it after Chapultepec Castle in Mexico. Now, how many of you are from Mexico? Chapultepec Castle is a gem in itself. It's gorgeous. Now, his travels in Mexico apparently, you know, gave him all these great inspirations. So he wanted his dining room to reflect the extravagance of Chapultepec Castle dining room. So he brought into the interior as much of that as he could. So that's what we're going to see. So take note of that. Okay, come on. Over here that would make it look better for us. There's a lot of things to show about it. Yeah. Now, as you can see, the railing. Take a photo of the railing is amazing. The woodwork, the carving, and of course, when he was building it, he engaged the finest workmen that you could find. He didn't just hire any Tom, Dick, and Harry. He found the best craftsmen that you could find. Look at the ceiling. Mm-hmm. The ceiling is in sort of quadrants. Now here's your little corner for your visitors. See? Now it's a small area, but you see how well you can sit around and, you know, over there, you have a seat there, and you can put your feet up, you know, and you can sit over here and put your feet up over there. See if there's a little couch, a little area. And this is how they have their various gatherings with their friends. So that's, you make the most of a small area when you have so much. Now the windows, as you can see, are most unusual. these look, you know, ornate, but you notice these two up here. What are those circles? Do you know what those circles are? Yeah. What do you think they are? Those circles on these two windows. What are those circles? Any idea? The bottoms of bottles. In other words, if you would take up the bottom of a wine bottle and cut the glass, that's what you get. So they were all set by the artist, all the bottom of me. So he had somebody cutting off the bottoms of bottles, assembling them on this design, and that's your artwork. Now you'd never think of that, would you? Now notice here, turn your head and you'll see the very same ornate little finishes on the sidework. See, now of course over here, when you have the mirror, and these things were for umbrellas. You know, you have people coming in out of the rain, they put their umbrellas here and stand them up here. And they would hang their hats here. See, they all wore hats, so we'd be hanging their hats here, and this is what they would do. Now, moving along in here, we see the little breakfast area for just small. I mean, remember he only has two people in his house. So this is the little breakfast area, so they don't have to use the big dining room. So they would have their breakfast over here, his mother and his sister, and that was fine for them, a couple of them. And notice the same little intricate thing. Now, of course, the windows, as you can see, open back to front as usual. They're from here. You know, you'd open the window over there, and you'd open them over here. That's why you had to have people working for you, because who's going to go around and close all these windows at night when it rains? You know? See, so there were jobs provided with every one of those things. So we can't just fall. So then over here, you see this most unusual cabinet here. See, these are the styles, some of the styles that he brought back from. Remember, I said he went to India, the Far East, and you know, Mexico, every place. All right, now we come inside here to the Chipotle place. Oh, that's yeah, all the way around, so that would be a visiting card. Yeah, look all around so you can all see. Now, are we all here? So this is this was his pride and joy, this dining room. And as you can see, it lacks nothing. Look at his cabinets for his dishes. Now, of course, he would have beautiful displays there. I mean, right now the dining room is used for dignitaries that come for board, sometimes for board dinners. So it's still in use. So you have to change some of the items around a little bit. So some of these things are modern things. But now in his day, you see all these silvers and crystals, they were all his. See, he brought everything, all these crystals you see, turn to the cabinet over here, all of these crystals, he purchased all those abroad. See, and he would bring those home with him, or have them shipped to his place. See, so money was no object. See, so now look at the chandelier. What do you think of the chandelier for this dining room? That must, that must be beautiful. That must be just like Chapultepec, because I was in there, but I can't remember now. I can't remember about that. Now, is it the same? Yeah, it looks the same. Now, notice his fireplace here. Now, of course, he had to think about his fireplace, because when you have your guests seated around, you have sparks flying. So what he did to fix that problem was, are they all in? Are they all seeing what we're talking about? Move around so it gives everybody more room. Yeah, otherwise you don't see some of the things that we're talking about. Okay, so he had to get a kind of a fuel, kind of a coal adapted to the such a kind of a coal that would not spark. And he put a fender in the front, like you put a thing around it to prevent sparks. But he got that kind of a coal, special kind of coal that didn't send out sparks. So that's what he used here, because you see you have gas sitting here, and, you know, they don't want it to be burned to death. Now, so over here you have some more of his little ornamentation. And in that corner, darling, excuse me, see the beautiful cups there that, see, look at the gold ornate, look, and there's no end to them. They're just amazing, beautiful. And so and then over here in this corner, we see the same thing here, these beautiful decorative crystals. So every place, and you know, they also say that he was a great entertainer himself, that he loved to cook. See, he was a very gifted man. He had his chef over here, so we come through here and just see, his chef would be in here, but he also used to put an apron on and cook himself. He loved it. See, he was, like I say, people are multi-talented. They turn their hand to anything and everything. I mean, it's amazing. So come on in and we'll see these were the pantry items that were here. You can see more of the same dishes, the beautiful dishes. Yeah, see, notice those dishes as you come in. You see some of the storage of the dishes would be here. See, so as you can see, you know, if you're setting the table with gold cups for the cups of tea, you know, that they like and all that. So over here you see more. But like I say, he designed it for his mother, so he spared nothing. He loved his mother, so he spared nothing. And look at above, you have a lot of that and more of these. See, everything is served on platters and everything. So anyway, so that's we can come through here now. Once you see
this is the original.
yeah, come through here. We're going to talk about that out here.
Even though it's the kitchen, but it's still yeah.
These. I'm going to. Now the piano, is there a piano right there? Yeah. See? Now come all the way around because we have different things. His portrait is up here where you can see.
Who he is.
Yeah, he was a distinguished looking man, Colonel. So come around and we'll see some more of the furnishings. There are some other things that you might be interested in. For example, now with the cotton field work, he had a teletype. See the teletype? That old-fashioned teletype, where they would he would be able to keep track of his cotton and all of that. So that goes very old. Excuse me, very old. Goes way back. Now this is his desk right here. Now let me show you something about his desk. See, today now, if you're a business person, you'd have a filing cabinet in which you'd file all your documents. Well, in his day, there was no file, but he had his own file here, see? And these were the storage places for all his bank accounts, his documents. You see, he would have a lot of stuff from banks and from the cotton business and his waterworks and his publishing. So do you see why he doesn't want the city to evaluate his property? Because he probably end up in jail with all the, find a lot of things wrong with things, you know. So here was his storage. Probably his money was kept over there, and this is his filing cabinet here, and then you would lock it here, see, and lock it there, so no thieves. They're simple as that. Today, now you wouldn't even think of this, and this is like the days when they say we would put our money under the mattress to hide it. Today you're looking at a different reality. But isn't that an interesting thing? See, and look at how it slides out so nicely like that. It's really nice, and these are his thing. Now, over here, this is his cash register. Now, do you all remember the days, or do any of you remember those cash registers in the stores? Anybody remember such a thing?
No?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not ancient history exactly, but they
Yeah.
do go back a long way.
Yeah.
So this is his cash register, and there were $20 is found inside. $20. So he was rich. In those days, $20 would buy you a lot of stuff. Okay, now let's go over further, and we'll see. Don't touch these chairs if they just fall apart. Okay, come this way. And you must have everything recorded.
Yes. I need to come back just so I can take more pictures.
And it's like all of the pieces kind of fit within the category, and a lot of what we're in. So what is Bangladesh? Yeah. Yeah. So looking at this, and then like seeing the next part, you know, versus this one, how simple it was, and then it got really ornate because the more wealthy you became, then the more decorative. So some of the pieces here were pieces that were brought in because the house was simple, but then there it was built more integrated into the built-ins, you know, the walls and the details, you know, the craftsmanship, because they could afford it. Yeah, definitely more elevated in terms of materials and craftsmanship, yeah, and all that. So. And then also you can see like a lot of it is pretty functional.
Remember I was telling you about his sister? Her name was Eleanor. I forgot her name. Eleanor Brakenridge. Isabel was the mother. So anyway, they, like I say, they lived as long as they were interested or could, and they lived in the other house. Then the mother died, and guess what? She died upstairs. So guess what happened to George when his mother dies?
Do you want like to sit?
No, I'm fine. Guess what happens to George when his mother dies? Hmm?
She got depressed.
He what?
She just, I don't know, like she got sad, maybe?
Yeah, she died of old age, you know, no old lady. She's ordinary. He couldn't live in the house any longer. See, they were sleeping on the same floor, and she dies in one room, and he couldn't, and he was so devoted to her, he couldn't take it. And so he put the place up for sale. After building it, the mansion for her and everything. And she lived in it as long as, you know, until she died. So that was what he wanted. But he was so devoted, he just could not live in the house with her having died there. Put it up for sale, and guess what? The Sisters of the Incarnate Word were looking for a place. And they came out, they were downtown in Santa Rosa. You know Santa Rosa Hospital downtown on Houston Street. They had started a hospital there for patients of all denominations and everybody. First hospital in San Antonio. So they were there, and they had a lot of orphans from the Civil War who came in and who were kind of, after they were taken care of, sort of, they opened an orphanage for them on Mission Road. And so they took care of the orphanage, but then they had to educate them. And who's going to educate them? These sisters were all hospital sisters. They were hired, or they were recruited as nurses to come to San Antonio and take care of the cholera victims of the yellow fever. And so they were not equipped to educate. I mean, they took care of them like as orphans, but then they needed to educate them. So it occurred to them, we would need to get a school. Now, wasn't that a brilliant idea? How are you going to educate somebody without a school? So they decided we'd have to start a school, although they came from France to do healthcare work. That's all they knew. They thought they were in a hospital in France. So they said, well, let's see, where are we going to find land? Downtown is all traffic and things. They're not going to want a school downtown. So they heard about that there was land out at the headwaters of the San Antonio River. That's what they used to call this place. Now, one thing that he did was he changed the name of the headwaters of the San Antonio River to Alamo Heights. There's the beginning of Alamo Heights. He called his building this and that one, and while he was here, he acquired all this other land until he ended up with Brakenridge Park and with the dam. You know the dam up there, the dam as you go up on 281. You know the dam on that, what do you call that street? Is it Divine Road, or you go around? Anyway, all that land up to the dam and over to include Brakenridge Park and Fort Sam Houston. Now, think about that. From Brakenridge Park, cut across. Remember, you're looking at a lot of land, not big houses and things, to Fort Sam Houston, the military base. He included all of that. By the time he left here, he had purchased and acquired all that land. Then as he was getting old now himself, you see the photograph, he's not a young man, and he has his bank downtown, and he has his everything everywhere, and he decides to give something back to the city, because after all, they sold this place to his mother for like $1,000 or something. Anyway, it wasn't much. And so he decides to give it something to the city. So he donates Brakenridge Park to the city for the public. Donated. And they say he was such an environmentalist. You can look in Brakenridge Park at all the circular roads around the trees. He would not let the trees be knocked down to build. You know, in other words, you see people when they want to build something, okay, that tree is in the way, and knock it down and put something there. He wouldn't allow that. He would put a road around it. So when you go to Brakenridge Park, look for that. That's an environmentalist. Now, he wasn't out there talking on the radio about it. He was doing it, doing the work. That's the difference between talk, which is cheap, and between working, putting your money into it, and doing it, and leaving it to posterity. That is the contribution he made. So he was so careful with the species and the kinds of plants and all of that. So these roads, so that land went to the city, Brakenridge Park, for the public. That was his gift, his final gift to the city. Then he was also with the University of Texas in Austin. He was a regent because he was so famous, you see, and he was a financier, what do you call a billionaire back then? They wouldn't say it like that, but that would be the kind he would be. So he was a regent on the University of Texas school board for years, several terms of office, because they kept voting him back in. And they say that he was so good with money that he was the only one who could get people to pay their rent for all the properties belonging to the University of Texas. In other words, the university, just like in Carnarvon, it would have say, properties, dormitories, and I don't know what all properties around that belonged to the university. Maybe there were houses, maybe there were warehouses, I don't know what they were. But people who rented them were lax about paying, oh, we don't have the money, we can't do it, you know. And he would be great for collecting all the, you see, he was a strict kind of he was a lawyer and an engineer and a brilliant mind with money and a financier under Abraham Lincoln. So you're looking at a man accomplished. So you can see why Austin University would have taken a great advantage to that. You know, they would just love that. So that was part of. So then he, the sisters then came here. He had already given away the land to the city. He has left now. He's left now at 280 acres. 280 acres, and including the 2 houses. So the sisters come, but they don't know anything about all of that background and all of that. They only know he has land out here. That's for sale. That was all they knew. And they're downtown with orphans and a hospital, a little hospital, trying to keep it going with free services to those who couldn't pay and all that kind of thing. You know the way it goes. So, so they come out here on a stagecoach. You know those stagecoaches that they used to have long ago, horse riding. And they would come out all the way out here to Alma Heights. And so this was not called Alma Heights. Alma Heights was this property here. That's all. That's where the name came from. So it remained like that. Nobody else knew that except himself and his family. So they came, and when they got as far as Broadway here, this corner where we would have the intersection coming into this building, they saw Catherine Court. And Catherine Court was all land over there, no houses. Remember, think of it as all land anywhere around when you come. So they looked at all the land that was surrounding. And over in Catherine Court, they thought, that would be a nice place for our school. And so they thought, you know, somebody helping them figure out how much. They thought 40 acres would be good. That would help us build our school. And so they said, well, let's ask him. So they told him he had to come over here. His office was over here. So they came over to meet him over here at his big desk with all his files, with all his place. And so they said, we want to buy 40 acres of your land, which is situated across the street in Catherine Court. And he said, no, because he said, I don't wish to break up my land. I want to sell it all or nothing. And that includes the 2 houses, this one and the mansion, and all the furnishings in the house. All goes together under one lump sum. That was his answer. And so the mothers, you know, they were so humble and they had no money. And they, this is the Reverend Mother, the head of the order, who founded the order from France. She came from France. The first 2 that came. And so they thanked him graciously, and they said they'd go home and pray. Now he was not a religious man. He was, how shall I say, he was practical kind of a man. You know, he wouldn't be motivated by, so they said that they had orphans and that they wanted to open a school for their orphans and other children. Us. So he wasn't moved by it. In other words, he wasn't the kind of a man who, another kind of a person would be moved, oh sure, take those 40 acres, they're sitting over there doing nothing, go and take them. You know what I mean? Or they would say, oh, for a school, yes, oh me, do that. And you see, over there, it wouldn't have interfered with them over here. There was no, now, there might have been a road. They used to call the road, which is Broadway, River Road. And that's why you'd hear many references to river thing, you know, about the river, because the downtown, you know, the river is a big thing. So that street was called River Road. And so anyway, that's the answer they got. So they went home and, you know, consulted with the others at home, and they decided to make a novena. No, a novena is a 9-day of prayer for a specific intention. In other words, you put all your energy and effort into this 9 day of prayer to God to move the heart of this man so that they can make a deal and get some of the land that they need for their school. That was their intention. It was not for themselves that they should get rich or they're famous or have a name or not, none of that. It was for a school for our children and their future. Now, is that long-sighted or what? I mean, anybody with a vision like that, I mean, telling him that didn't move, he wasn't moved by that. So the only one's going to be moved by that is God Almighty, who already controls and owns everything in the world, and we're just the visitors. We're just servants. We're just here to serve our time, and then we go back to our Creator. That's our lives. That's what we're here for. That's why we're here. So, asking God to intervene so that this man will be moved, and so that they will acquire the deposit that they're going to need. Now remember, you're talking about non-profit. There were no galas in those days. You put a gala on and you bring in enough money to get you through your 1 year. Okay. No such thing as fundraisers. No such thing as going around begging for the money. You couldn't do that. They arrest you. So all they could do was pray to God to send them people with money who could help them make their deposit to get a hold of the land. And all they're looking for now is 40 acres, remember. But his answer to them was, you have to take it off. I won't cut up my land. So 9 days of prayer, and their favorite saint intervening for them was Saint Joseph. Now, you'll often hear it said, if you ever have a property issue, ask Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph had to provide a home for his wife and his son, Jesus Christ. Imagine that, having to do that. He had to provide them with a home. Where is he going to? He had to work, hard work, provide a home for his family. So he knows all about the hardship. Then he had to fly off to Egypt to escape being murdered, his child being murdered, to find a job in Egypt to support his wife and child, a baby. Where is it? All like that. He knows all about the struggle of a father providing for his child, his family, his wife and his child. So he's the best one to say, intervene before God to get us this land so that we can make a future for the children of this city and beyond. Many others out of town. So 9 days of doing that. Imagine that now. 9 long days. And no contact, there's no phones, remember, and no calling on the phone, no texting on the thing to see did it happen or not happen or nothing like that. So 9 days are up, and they returned. They had gotten, in the meantime, different banks in different places, and friends far away even, sent donations, sent money to make the deposit on the land. So with the help of all these outsiders that helped them, they accumulated enough money to put it in a bag and bring it out here to Brakenridge, to the colonel. So they come to him and they said, here is your deposit. We will take it all. And of course, he nearly dies because he knew them to be poverty-stricken, having no bank, no nothing, no bank account, no money, impoverished. What are you coming to me for? That kind of thing. So he just almost dies, but he can't really, here's the money. That's the woman on TV who said, show me the money. And there it is. See, so he shows them the money. So he reluctantly has to take it, and then he has to, they said, we'd like to sign the document. And see, they didn't trust him. So they got him he provided the contract, and so they signed the document. They would have to pay back in installments every so often, in other words, they were making their deposit now, but then they're going to be having to come back and make additional payments you know, spread out. I don't know how exactly they did that. Several payments. So he couldn't do anything other than, okay, here. So they took the document and ran with it because they were afraid of their lives. And he said, okay, I'm going on a trip. And so I'll take what my belongings I need from here, and you can just move in then. So they were delighted because he was going on a trip. That meant foreign land or something like that, be a long time gone. So they were just afraid that he might change his mind because he wasn't, I don't want to say he was prejudiced against them, but you know what I mean? In those days, they didn't care, you know. I mean, they weren't, how do you say? It's just, I don't know, materialism, you know. Anyway, so he moves out, takes his belongings with him, whatever he needed, and then from downtown, they got the orphans. I mean, they got all the sisters that were living in the orphanage, and they were living in the hospital, and so they all got their belongings together and came out here to take over the house, because that was the first thing. If you don't take it over, only God knows what would happen. See, so they had to move fast, and they came in, and of course when they came in here, they were living in poverty, and they came in and saw all this lavish furniture and belongings and things. So they paid no attention to that. They found probably they had to get mattresses on the floor or something like that in the different rooms. So they just managed with whatever was in the house. They had, like, there would be probably 3 beds upstairs that they were able to use. And so they filed into the different rooms and filled up. And their idea was, we'll move into this house and we'll build our house next door. That was what, we'll build our house and our school next door. And that building over there is the forerunner. That was the building. It has changed many times. I mean, now it's a modern kind of a retirement facility now. But that was their first home, and they were going to have their school on the ground level. And it was going to be a boarding school, mind you, because the kids have no transportation. They have to be taken by bus, or by some sort of, they had streetcars. There was a streetcar thing that would come out this street from downtown. So kids would have to come by the streetcar, and they would have to, and so they were kept as boarders, and on the weekend they'd go home to their parents. So they sent them here as boarders. And so they would be, so the bottom ground level was for the boarders, for the school, and the classrooms, and then the boarders' quarters, and then the top floor, the sisters lived on the top floor. That's how it was set up. So the furnishings in the house, they just covered everything over, put it, over the ornaments, covered them up with the cloth, protecting them from, and they just lived in the house, enough to, the kitchen, enough to survive, cook their food in the kitchen, and, they covered up the ornaments and left everything as it was, never changed anything in the cabinets and all like that. They wouldn't use any of that. They would probably brought their furnishings, whatever they had from downtown, just simple dishes and things like that. They wouldn't be using any of the ornate stuff. So they covered it up with the intention that as soon as our building is ready, we'll move out in there and we'll open this up to the chaplains of the college. I mean, they had no college then, but they, no chaplains then either, because it was, but they had in mind us as a guest house for visiting dignitaries, like the bishops coming up from Mexico. So at that time, they were going to plan to use it as a guest house. So they would leave everything in ornamentation as a nice place for visitors. But it wasn't going to be their home. You see what I mean? They were going to live a simple life and have a school and a dormitory for their children. So that's the beginning of Incarnate Word University. Enough said. Now, I may have forgotten some things when I was talking to you. So you can ask now any question that you have, that you were thinking while I was talking about that, I had to try to keep the sequence going so that we didn't forget the different parts. Do you have any questions now that I didn't clarify or? Yeah.
No, I appreciate how the story and as we walk through the house, the narrative fits in with kind of what we've been talking about. So from the textbook, we actually get to see a tangible, pieces in terms of the pieces that we're talking about. So
Well, that's
I appreciate
good.
that.
You're able to fill in the gaps, then you get an idea.
Yes.
And it's good to know the history of this location. Like you can see why he called it Alamo Heights. See, the Alamo, you see, was always there, and he had that nice image in mind. And Heights, it's up on a kind of a hill here. So he started that, and then as this Alamo Heights developed, see, from here it's spread. See, the city began to grow, and it just assumed the name. Very interesting, I thought, And the word Brakenridge wouldn't have been used by him. It was just the sisters thought, we'll call it what it is, and it's his house. And they weren't going to call it their house because they were only using it to buy some land. They were given it as a part of the deal, but they didn't need it for themselves. They needed the land. And then look at the advantageous land, because after the students started, they began with grade school. Then they went into high school. The levels were added one by one. Grade school, high school, and then remember they had to recruit teachers for all these things. The high school. Then when they finished high school, they said, now what? There's no college for them. There's no place for women. No Lady of the Lake. No St. Mary's University. What are we going to do now? And they said, oh well, we must do it ourselves. See, this is how you do things. You don't sit back and wait and blame everyone that they didn't do anything and why aren't they doing it, but doing it. Taking the moment and working with what you have. So they decided we will start studying. They got one of their sisters and they trained them up to get a PhD up in Washington and I don't know where else. And this is how you do it. You educate your teachers, and then they applied for a grant. Applied for a license from the state of Texas, and all that, and they started developing the first year of college. And then they said, well, now where are we going to put the students? Then the next step is we have to build a college. We can't house them here because they're finished high school. Now we're going to need a building. So that was the next phase. So they had to sell off a piece of the land, the dam. They sold off the dam at the top of the land, and they sold off a piece that's now over there in Patterson, that high rise. They sold that off and the top of the land, and then they sold off Catherine Court. See, remember that's where they wanted to go first? So they sold off these pieces of land on the outskirts to give them the money to build their college. Now, is that good business? Do you think? You're all smart students? Is that good? Well, anyway, that's what they did. That's how they did it. That's the only way they could manage. And so the rest of the land then was great for the college, because once they built the college, then they were able to move the grade school, the high school. First of all, went there. Then they moved up the street and they said, let's build a high school for themselves, and they have their own school. So then the high school was the next thing built on Mount Aaron Heights, they used to call that. And built their high school there. And then the college then kept growing and developing to where it occupied all of that front building that you see was the first building. Then year by year, they start adding on and adding on and adding on, building after building after building. And that's how the work of God continues to this day. It's all built on the grace of God providing. God is our provider. And we have to remember, it's not us, it's not our doing. He gave us the intelligence to use our intelligence to do these things, provide and plan and all of that. That's how God works. So now, any other questions before we depart? No other questions? Okay, well,
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
pardon?
We really appreciate you
Oh,
taking
I'm
us on the
glad
tour and all the
you
great
come,
information.
yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure, I'm glad you came, and you know, when you pass by, you know what's going on in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so, yeah, I won't keep you any longer than that.